Hey guys, and welcome to this next lesson. In this next lesson, I'm going to be briefly introducing you to the styles that I've been pointing out throughout the course. All of them perfect for working with Illustrator or any other Vectorial program. The first style we're going to work with is the cartoon style. I like to talk about this style because it represents a really flashy and colorful image. We can use this for digital portraits, stickers, and it's very much in the skateboarding and hipster t-shirts, industry. Let's move on to the first image. As you can see, it has thick strokes and flat colors that make the character really stand out. The brightness in this occasion is really subtle, but even so, the image attracts like a caricature, and the palette is pretty neutral. But I'm going to be using more examples than just this one so you can understand the stretch of this style. Okay, so this style we have right here can be obtained through a widening of the strokes, or maybe through a treatment of light that allows the drawing to stand out a bit more for itself. Due to the impact that the tone contrasts can make. In this case, we can see that the drawing is quite simple compared with the ones you could look for searching for a vector cartoon image. You guys can dig deeper, but I wanted to use this as an example so you could see that one style can mean a lot of difference in its own style. The lights that I normally use are secondary and they shine brighter, but in this image, they're also quite visible. Okay, this is the next case. In this image, we have, as you can see, sort of a reduced palette, and we can see the use of a pattern on the textures of the illustration. The line art made up of the black lines that surround the character is also something to be pointed out, as they can give the drawing quite a lot of character. We can see that although there's a limited palette, the images are visually impacting because there's no overload in the tones, and they just stand out by themselves. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one here has tones that have been softened with a series of gradients that enrich the image and give it much more of a complex appearance. It also has more brightness, and the fusion modes add luminosity and darkness to the image. The line work with different widths is something that, again, makes this image stand out. As you may have seen, the themes in these illustrations are, quite varied in content. We have character portraits to character designs straight out of the imagination, like creature designs. They're apt resources to use to develop our cartoon style because of how attractive the aesthetic they have is. Okay, let's go on to the next style that can be done in vector design applications. It's the comic style. I'm more a fan of Marvel myself. This is the next style we're going to be working with. It's normally used in print to accompany articles or to create graphic novels. It's a much more personal style because each artist represents their stories in their own way. They have some characteristics which are common throughout that we'll see soon. I'll develop my own style, but we'll work it out. Currently, there's a lot of artists that use this style because it reflects something that's much more personal, and it's easy to attract a crowd with a style that's so familiar and so close. Let's move on to the next image. In this image, we have a group of objects related to space. It actually represents a simple level of iconicity because there's no real signature. However, we can see each object quite clearly and what they are. There's a certain texture in the more basic colors that the artist has chosen to use in his or her illustration, and other patterns created with simple lines. In this case, the illustrator has chosen a space theme, like the one I'm going to be using. But I'm using this as a reference to show you the variety that there is a lot in this style. You can create simple shapes, and we can still, or at least nearly, perceive the personality in each of the objects. Obviously, inanimate objects don't have a personality, but the characters do, like the aliens or the astronauts, which have similar characteristics. This is a second image we can find that has a much higher level of iconicity. There's a lot more realism, and you can appreciate that thanks to some more consolidated curves. In this case here, we don't have any story, but that's not something that's obligatory when making a comic style. The color palette isn't really much bigger, but even in how reduced it is, we can distinguish the orange tone, which is the one that stands out more from this image. However, it's still a simple representation, simple to give it an adjective, of an old man reading a newspaper calmly in a cafe. Fantasy can kind of fly as much as you want it to. We can really find ourselves stopping to think about the character's actions. Like, what is he doing there? Like, why does he have this attitude while reading the newspaper? This is all thanks to the artist using the image to show his personality. Okay, this is the last image we'll use to talk about the comic style. I prefer to choose a landscape because we've seen a lot of how characters will look. The shapes are very well defined and gradients are very well defined, giving a lovely appearance to the background and to the sea that we can see in front. We can also see a gradient in some of the shadows on the house, and the details are quite subtle, although we can put ourselves in the landscape easily. It creates composition in a place where the details are clear, especially in the elements with opacity in the surroundings. We can easily see the division in the levels in this illustration. Like, for example, the change in tones in the distance of the mountains or in the house's darkness. Let's go on to the next style. It's the last one I'd like to talk about. It's known as flat. This style can be used in a number of products or materials, seen as its simplicity makes it very easy to reproduce. It's characterized by flat colors that will make up our image. It's the last one we're going to see, and I'm going to show you 3 examples so you can see the variety in the style. It's not just the small details that stand out, okay? This one, without a doubt, is the best one for our work in the case that we wanted to work on this style, because it's pretty easy to do. Okay, in this first image we have a landscape with some birds where the tones are what create the figures and give depth to the illustration. There's no line art or detail more than what we need, yet we have a powerful image that we can use in advertising, signs, patterns, propaganda. It all depends on what we want to do. To create a flat concept, we don't really need to know very much about illumination, because creativity and imagination are what we use when developing this style. If we use a reference, we're going to create an image that's even more powerful than if we didn't. That's why it's more recommendable to use one. This is the second image. It's even more simple, and it doesn't have many details that give it light or shadows. This style allows us to, in my opinion, synthesize things a lot. If we look at this, there's hardly any details in the girls' lips or in their faces. There's just blots of color that represent the glasses, the hair, or whatever they're holding. Okay, maybe they're holding hands. We don't know. There's no detail or shading. Let's go to the next picture. This one here is a bit more complex. And it's still flat in style. All of the busts we see here have been created with simple flat shapes, giving light or darkness just with the tone. The geometry is really present inside the flat style, and we have to keep this in mind if we want to develop our project, following these characteristics I pointed out. To do this, we have to make up our images using geometry. Okay, make it quite geometrical. And, for example, the depth has to be based on the color changes we can add to it. You have to keep in mind, when we develop our illustration, the most optimal way of working on these images is to work with a reduced color palette. This way, there isn't that much distraction when we show this out to the public in some kind of presentation. Okay, I hope you found this useful and I hope it's inspired you. I'll see you guys in the next lesson where we'll start to develop our own project. See you guys later. I can't wait to see what you guys prepare. Woo, let's do it. Yeah.